The overhead lights flickered in the laboratory as Dr. Marcus Everett hunched over his workstation. 3 years on Research Station Artemis, orbiting the exoplanet Proxima b, had changed him. His once clean-shaven face now sported a scruffy beard, and dark circles had become permanent fixtures under his eyes. "Vital signs stabilizing," announced the lab's AI assistant, Minerva. Subject XB7 showing remarkable adaptation to the modified genome. Marcus straightened, his spine cracking in protest. Through the incubation chamber's transparent barrier, he observed his creation. Unlike the previous 6 attempts, XB7 had survived the integration of human and Proximan DNA. The hybrid's form was humanoid but distinctly alien. Iridescent scales covered portions of her lavender skin, and her eyes were large, cat-like, with vertical pupils. "Run a cognitive assessment," Marcus instructed, tapping commands into his console. "Let's see if we've made progress on the neural pathways." The chamber hummed as scanning beams passed over the sleeping hybrid. Marcus had designed the project to create adaptive organisms that could survive Proxima b's harsh environment, potentially paving the way for human colonization. The corporation funding his research, Helix Dynamics, had less altruistic motives: bioweapons and exploitable biological technologies. Cognitive activity exceeding parameters, Minerva reported. Brain development at 173% of projected timeline. Marcus froze. "That's impossible." "Rerun the scan." Scan confirmed. Subject is exhibiting unprecedented neural growth. As if responding to their discussion, XB7's eyes fluttered open. Marcus found himself staring into brilliant amber irises with an unmistakable awareness behind them. She blinked, focusing directly on him. "Hello," Marcus said softly, not expecting comprehension. The hybrid tilted her head, studying him with unnerving intensity. Then, impossibly, her lips moved. "Hello." The voice was raspy but distinctly feminine. Marcus nearly stumbled backward. "Minerva, are you recording this?" "Affirmative, Doctor." All logs updated. Over the following weeks, XB7's development astounded Marcus. She learned language at an exponential rate, displayed remarkable physical abilities, and demonstrated emotional responses. Marcus named her Talia, after the Greek muse of flourishing abundance. "What does this mean?" Talia asked one evening, pointing to a holographic display of Earth's solar system. "That's where I come from," Marcus explained. "A planet called Earth." "And I am from here," she said, indicating Proxima b, "but also from you." Her pupils dilated as she gazed at him. "Part of you is in me." Something in her tone made Marcus's heartbeat quicken. "Scientifically speaking, yes. I used some human DNA sequences to help stabilize your cognitive functions." Talia stepped closer, her movements graceful and deliberate. "I feel connected to you. Is that part of your design?" Before Marcus could respond, Minerva interrupted. "Incoming transmission from Helix Dynamics, Priority Alpha." The screen flickered to life, revealing Alexandra Vaughn, Helix's research oversight director. Her stern expression tightened at the sight of Talia standing beside Marcus. "Dr. Everett, your quarterly report indicated minimal progress. Yet I see a fully developed specimen. Explain this discrepancy." Marcus positioned himself slightly in front of Talia. "Recent breakthroughs, Director. I was compiling comprehensive data before reporting. The board is concerned about your isolation affecting judgment. I'm arriving in 48 hours for an in-person evaluation." The transmission ended abruptly. Talia's hand touched Marcus's shoulder, her touch feather-like yet sending electricity through him. "She wants to take me away," Talia said, her voice eerily certain. Marcus turned to face his creation, struck by the protective impulse surging through him. "I won't let that happen," he promised, uncertain how he could possibly keep such a vow against the corporate giant that controlled everything on the station, including, technically, Talia. Her amber eyes seemed to glow as she stepped closer. "I belong with you, Creator. I will not be separated from you." For the first time, Marcus felt a flicker of apprehension, not about Talia's capabilities, but about the depths of her attachment to him, and his to her. The next morning, Marcus awoke to find Talia standing by his bedside, watching him with those intense amber eyes. He started, pulling the blanket higher. "You were distressed in your sleep," she said, her head tilting with bird-like curiosity. "Your vital signs indicated elevated stress." Marcus rubbed his face, trying to shake off the remnants of nightmares about Helix Dynamics taking Talia away. "I'm fine. But you shouldn't be in my quarters without permission." Talia's brow furrowed. "Your well-being concerns me." She sat on the edge of his bed, her movements fluid. The station's dim morning lighting caught the iridescence of her scales, creating a hypnotic pattern along her shoulders and the elegant curve of her spine. "We need to establish boundaries," Marcus said, his voice not as firm as he'd intended. "Director Vaughn arrives tomorrow. We need to prepare." In the lab, Marcus documented Talia's capabilities while instructing her on how to respond to Helix's questions. Her strength had continued developing, she could now bend metal with her bare hands. Her reflexes operated at speeds his instruments struggled to measure. Again, Marcus instructed, running a combat simulation. "But remember. Show only 60% capacity," Talia finished. "Hide my true potential." As she moved through the holographic obstacles, Marcus couldn't help but admire her grace. Her body was a perfect synthesis of human and alien physiology, each movement displaying power and control. Without warning, a tremor shook the station. Warning klaxons blared. "Containment breach in Section 4, Minerva announced. Volatile compound release detected." Marcus rushed to the environmental controls. "Seal all," his words cut off as the overhead panel exploded in a shower of sparks, sending him flying backward. His head struck the edge of a workstation with a sickening crack. Through blurred vision, he saw caustic green gas pouring from the ventilation system. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Then Talia was lifting him effortlessly, carrying him through the thickening toxic cloud. Her respiratory system, designed to filter Proxima B's harsh atmosphere, protected her while Marcus's lungs burned. Memories fragmented. Talia punching an override code. Emergency decontamination. The sanitization shower's cold spray. Talia's arms around him, her skin slick against his as she held him upright, whispering, "Stay with me, Creator." Hours later, Marcus regained full consciousness in the medical bay. Talia sat beside him, her eyes never leaving his face. "You saved my life," he murmured. "You gave me life," she replied simply. Her hand found his, her touch sending warmth through his body. "We are balanced now." That night, as the station systems recovered from the accident, Talia helped Marcus to his quarters. The head injury made walking difficult. He leaned on her, acutely aware of her strength, of how easily she supported him. "You should rest," she said, lowering him to his bed. "So should you," he replied, but made no move to send her away. Talia sat beside him, her eyes luminous in the dimness. "I learn quickly, Marcus. I understand human emotions now, fear, gratitude, desire." Her fingers traced the bandage on his temple with exquisite gentleness. "Do you desire me as I desire you?" The question hung between them, charged with possibilities. Marcus knew he should maintain professional distance, knew the ethical implications of what she was asking. Yet when she leaned closer, her scent filling his senses, something like cinnamon and ozone, his resolve weakened. "This is complicated," he whispered. "No." Her lips brushed his ear. "It is simple. I am yours, made from you, for you. And now you are mine to protect, to cherish, to pleasure. When their lips met, Marcus felt as though he was falling into orbit around a new sun. Her skin was warm, almost feverish, the scales along her back smooth beneath his fingers. She moved with inhuman precision, anticipating his every reaction, learning his body with the same rapid efficiency with which she'd mastered language and combat. Later, as they lay entwined, Talia traced patterns on his chest. Tomorrow, they come to take me away. But they cannot have what is yours alone. Marcus pulled her closer, rational thought overwhelmed by possessive instinct. No one will separate us, he promised, sealing the vow with another kiss that deepened into something more urgent, more primal. Outside, the stars of Proxima Centauri cast crimson light across the station, a blood-red warning of the confrontation to come. The corporate shuttle docked with a mechanical thunk that resonated through Research Station Artemis. Marcus stood rigidly in the reception bay, his scientific uniform pressed and his beard trimmed in an attempt to project professional competence. Beside him, Talia wore the standard-issue research assistant jumpsuit he'd hastily programmed the fabricator to create. "Remember," he murmured. "Basic responses only. Don't demonstrate advanced cognition or emotional complexity." Talia's posture was perfect, almost too perfect to be human. "I understand, Dr. Everett," she replied, using his formal title as they'd practiced. The airlock cycled open. Director Alexandra Vaughn stepped through first, her sharp features set in a mask of corporate authority. She was accompanied by 2 security officers and a thin man whose augmented eyes marked him as a neural specialist. "Dr. Everett," Vaughn nodded curtly. "And this must be XB-7. Her gaze traveled over Talia with clinical detachment. "Impressive morphology." "Thank you, Director," Marcus replied. "Talia has exceeded our initial adaptation parameters." "Talia?" The neural specialist raised an eyebrow. "You've named the specimen?" "Designation facilitates communication," Marcus explained, hating the clinical tone he was forced to adopt. "Would you like to see the laboratory?" During the tour, Marcus presented carefully curated data on Talia's development while concealing her true capabilities. Talia performed each requested demonstration with deliberately restrained efficiency, never showing her full strength or intelligence. The neural specialist, Dr. Wayland, observed Talia through his augmented eyes, which whirred and clicked as they adjusted focus. "Remarkable neural architecture," he commented. "The limbic system integration with the alien cortical structures is particularly fascinating." "What are the combat applications?" one of the security officers asked bluntly. Marcus tensed. "The research focuses on adaptation for colonization purposes, not military applications." Director Vaughn smiled thinly. "All Helix technologies serve multiple functions, Dr. Everett. Surely you've tested physical capabilities?" "Basic assessments only," Marcus lied. Later, in the conference room, Vaughn laid out Helix's plans while Talia was subjected to medical scans in another lab. "The board is extremely pleased," she told Marcus. "They're authorizing a full research division based on your work, with expanded facilities on Europa Station." "Europa?" Marcus frowned. "That's a military installation." "With excellent containment facilities," Wayland added. "We'll need to deconstruct the genetic sequences, perhaps attempt breeding programs." "Breeding programs?" Marcus couldn't contain his shock. "Talia is a sentient being, not livestock." Vaughn's eyes narrowed. "XB-7 is Helix property, Doctor. Your contract is quite clear on intellectual ownership of all research outcomes. When do you intend to transfer the specimen?" Marcus asked, fighting to keep his voice steady. "We depart tomorrow. We've brought a specialized containment unit." Vaughn studied him. "Your attachment seems excessive, Doctor. Perhaps 3 years in isolation has affected your objectivity." "Professional pride," Marcus replied stiffly. I want to ensure my research is properly utilized. That night, after the corporate team retired to their assigned quarters, Marcus and Talia met in the station's hydroponics bay, the one place free of surveillance cameras, where the dense foliage provided cover. They intend to dissect me, Talia said calmly. To breed from me. To make weapons of my children. Marcus paced between rows of oxygen-producing plants. I won't let that happen. Talia caught his hand, stopping his nervous movement. There is a way, Marcus. Her eyes glowed in the dim green lighting. I've been accessing the station's systems. I can override the shuttle's navigation protocols, reroute it. That's hijacking, Marcus whispered. They'd hunt us across the system. Yes. Talia stepped closer, her body pressing against his. But we would be together. Her fingers traced the fading bruise at his temple. Last night, you said no one would separate us. Did you mean it? Marcus pulled her into his arms, his scientific ethics warring with the primitive need to protect her, to keep what was his. When she kissed him, her lips hot and insistent, the decision crystallized. The shuttle departs at 0600, he murmured against her mouth. We'll need to move before then. Their lovemaking that night was desperate, charged with the danger of their situation. Talia's strength was unleashed fully now, her inhuman flexibility allowing her to wrap around him completely, as if trying to merge their bodies as thoroughly as their fates had become merged. I am yours, she whispered, her voice taking on the musical quality it did in moments of intense emotion. And you are mine. No corporation, no world, no law will change this. As artificial dawn began to lighten the station, they dressed silently, gathering only essential supplies. Marcus downloaded his research to a secure drive, then activated the emergency purge protocol that would erase all backup data. Ready? He asked Talia. Her amber eyes gleamed with anticipation. For a new world with you? Always. The research shuttle wasn't designed for comfort, but it had one crucial advantage. Helix Dynamics had equipped it with the latest stealth technology to protect their corporate secrets. Marcus piloted the craft away from Research Station Artemis, his hands trembling slightly on the controls. Behind them, emergency alarms flashed silently in the vacuum of space. Director Vaughn and her team had discovered their absence an hour ahead of schedule when Talia's monitoring implant had gone offline, removed by Marcus in a hasty surgical procedure before they'd boarded the shuttle. Pursuit craft launching, Talia reported, her eyes fixed on the scanner. She'd interfaced directly with the shuttle systems, her neural pathways connecting with the ship's computer in ways Marcus hadn't anticipated. Estimated interception in 43 minutes. Marcus programmed a series of randomized jumps, hoping to confuse their pursuers. We need somewhere to hide, somewhere beyond Helix jurisdiction. The outer reaches, Talia suggested. The mining colonies operate under independent charters. As they pushed the small craft to its limits, Marcus observed how seamlessly Talia had adapted to space travel. She moved with perfect balance despite the shifting gravity, her body automatically adjusting to each change in velocity and direction. During a particularly violent evasive maneuver, Talia was thrown against him. The momentary contact sent electricity through his nervous system, a reminder of what they'd shared in the night, what they were risking everything to preserve. If they catch us, he began. They won't, she interrupted, her confidence absolute. I won't allow it. 3 days later, having outrun their initial pursuers through a series of increasingly risky maneuvers, they drifted into the asteroid belt surrounding Epsilon Eridani, a star system known for its lawless mining operations. Long-range scanners show a settlement on the largest asteroid, Talia reported. Unusual energy signatures, not standard human technology. Marcus adjusted their approach vector. Could be modified mining equipment. What they discovered was something far more significant. The settlement was built into the asteroid itself, a warren of tunnels and chambers illuminated by bioluminescent lighting. And its inhabitants, Marcus stared in disbelief as they were escorted through the main concourse. Hybrids. Dozens of them. Some appeared predominantly human with subtle alien characteristics, others were more obviously non-terrestrial in origin. All moved with the same fluid grace that characterized Talia. Their guide, who had introduced himself as Darius, appeared largely human except for the ridge of crystalline structures protruding from his spine. "You're not the first scientist to discover that their creation was more than an experiment," he explained, leading them to a communal area. "We call this sanctuary. Most of us worked property once, just like your Talia. How many of you are there?" Marcus asked, still overwhelmed by the discovery. "Several hundred across 3 settlements," Darius replied. "Some born here, others escaped from corporate laboratories or military installations. Later, in the privacy of their assigned quarters, a simple but comfortable chamber carved from the asteroid's rock, Talia explored Marcus with renewed hunger. Her body seemed to glow from within as she moved above him, her scaled skin catching the light from the bioluminescent panels. "You freed me twice now," she whispered, her voice melodic with emotion. "First from non-existence, then from captivity." Marcus pulled her closer, burying his face in the curve of her neck. "I should have realized sooner what they intended," he said. "I was naive." "No," Talia straddled him, her powerful thighs pressing against his sides. "You created me with the capacity for free will. That was never naive, it was revolutionist." She kissed him deeply, her tongue alien yet familiar against his. "And now we've found others, a place where I'm not a curiosity or a weapon." Their lovemaking that night had a new quality, a celebration of discovery rather than a desperate affirmation of connection. Talia's confidence had grown, she took control, showing Marcus pleasures his human imagination had never conceived. Her body's adaptations included sensitive nerve clusters in unexpected places, and she guided his hands to each one, teaching him to play her body like an exotic instrument. In the artificial dawn of the asteroid settlement, Marcus watched Talia sleeping beside him. For the first time since they'd fled, he felt hope for their future. They could stay here, he thought, become part of this hybrid community. A sharp alarm cut through his reverie. The settlement's warning system. Darius's voice came through the communication system. "Corporate vessels approaching. Helix markings. They've found us." Talia's eyes snapped open, instantly alert. "They've tracked the shuttle," she said, already moving, her naked body a blur of purpose as she reached for her clothing. "They've found your creation, Marcus. And now they've found all of us." The sanctuary's defense grid activated as the Helix vessels approached, a remarkable fusion of advanced human technology and adaptive alien systems. Marcus watched from the command center as Darius coordinated their response, hybrid operators interfacing directly with control panels in ways no unmodified human could. "Helix is hailing us," a communications officer announced. "They're demanding we surrender the stolen property designated XB-7 and Dr. Marcus Everett." Talia, standing beside Marcus, tensed visibly. "They still see me as an object." "Standard corporate position," Darius replied grimly. "Acknowledge possession and they establish legal claim in any jurisdiction." The main screen flickered to life, revealing Director Vaughn's face. If she was surprised to discover an entire settlement of hybrids, she concealed it masterfully. "Dr. Everett," she said, her voice cold. "You've violated multiple contract clauses, committed corporate theft, and endangered proprietary research. Surrender immediately and we may avoid involving colonial enforcement." Marcus stepped forward. "Talia is a sentient being, not property. Your breeding program would constitute slavery at best, genocide at worst." Vaughn's expression hardened. "You have 30 minutes to surrender XB-7. After that, we'll consider the entire settlement complicit in corporate theft." When the transmission ended, Darius turned to the assembled hybrid council. "They won't stop with Talia. Once they've confirmed our existence, they'll claim jurisdiction over all of us. We can't outgun Helix warships," another council member pointed out. "No," Talia agreed, her voice taking on that musical quality that emerged in moments of intensity. "But we can outthink them." What followed was the most remarkable strategy session Marcus had ever witnessed. The hybrids communicated with an efficiency humans could never achieve, building on each other's ideas with perfect comprehension. Talia integrated seamlessly into their process, her relative youth offset by her advanced neural architecture. Their plan wasn't conventional warfare. Instead, they prepared a multi-layered defense that utilized their unique abilities and the asteroid's unusual properties. As the 30-minute deadline approached, Marcus found a moment alone with Talia in a side corridor. "If anything happens," he began. She silenced him with a kiss, her scaled hands framing his face with exquisite gentleness. "Nothing will separate us," she promised, an echo of his own vow to her. Not Helix, not death. The first wave of Helix forces breached the outer defenses exactly as the hybrids had predicted. Security teams in advanced combat suits poured from boarding vessels, weapons drawn. They encountered no immediate resistance, another part of the strategy. Instead, the environment itself became their enemy. The hybrids had reconfigured the settlement's life support systems to create areas of disorienting atmospheric pressure. Gravity plates activated in random sequences, sending armored soldiers crashing into walls or floating helplessly. Communications jammed selectively, isolating squad leaders from their teams. When Director Vaughn herself entered with the second wave, escorted by her neural specialist and a squad of elite guards, Talia was waiting. She stood alone in the central chamber, seemingly unarmed and vulnerable. "Subject XB-7, Vaughn said, satisfaction evident in her voice. "Where is Dr. Everett?" "My name is Talia," she replied calmly. "And Marcus is safe." The neural specialist, Wayland, adjusted his augmented eyes, scanning Talia's physical state. "Remarkable development since the station. Your neural complexity has nearly doubled." "That's quite enough," Vaughn snapped. "Secure the specimen." As the guards moved forward, the trap was sprung. Hidden hybrid operators activated the modified gravity controls. Everyone except Talia, who had adapted to the shifting gravitational field, crashed to the ground under 3 times normal gravity. Marcus emerged from concealment, accompanied by Darius and several council members. While the Helix forces struggled against the crushing gravity, he approached Vaughn, holding a data tablet. Live streaming now to the Colonial Ethics Committee, the Scientific Coalition, and 17 independent news networks, he informed her, turning the screen so she could see the transmission acknowledgments. Complete documentation of Helix's plan to breed sentient beings for weapons development. Testimony from 37 escaped hybrids subjected to corporate experimentation. Vaughn's face contorted with rage. "You wouldn't dare. Your career is no longer in corporate science," Marcus finished. He nodded to Talia, who adjusted the gravity field to allow Vaughn to sit up. "Here's our proposition. Helix acknowledges hybrid personhood and relinquishes all claims on Talia and the sanctuary settlements. In exchange, we don't release the more ethically problematic aspects of your research." 6 hours of negotiation later, an agreement was reached. Helix would publicly recognize hybrid independence and establish a non-aggression pact, in exchange for limited technology sharing and the suppression of the most damaging evidence of their past experimentation. As the corporate vessels departed, leaving behind monitoring equipment that the hybrids would dismantle within hours, Marcus found Talia on an observation platform overlooking the asteroid field. "You were magnificent," he told her, still amazed by how she'd coordinated the defense with her fellow hybrids. She turned to him, her amber eyes reflecting the distant stars. We both were. Your understanding of human psychology was as valuable as my abilities. What happens now? He asked, suddenly uncertain. She had found her people, a community where she belonged naturally. Would she still want him? Talia smiled, reading his doubt with her uncanny perception. She stepped closer, her scaled hand finding his. Now we build something new. The Council has asked us to establish diplomatic contact with other hybrid settlements. There are rumors of communities as far out as the Tau Ceti system. Us? Marcus asked, hope rising. Always us, she confirmed, her free hand caressing his cheek. You created me from the best of two worlds. Now we'll create a future the same way. Her kiss tasted of possibility, of worlds yet undiscovered. As Marcus pulled her closer, he marveled at how his greatest scientific achievement had led to his greatest personal transformation. In creating Talia, he had ultimately recreated himself. That night, as they made love beneath the vast observation dome, the stars of unfamiliar constellations bearing witness, Marcus understood finally what Talia had meant when she'd first awakened. They belonged to each other, not as creator and creation, but as equal halves of something entirely new in the universe. My Talia, he whispered against her luminescent skin. My Marcus, she answered, her voice musical with emotion. My beginning and my forever. Around them, the asteroid settlement hummed with activity as hybrids prepared for a new era of independence. And beyond, the infinite stars promised worlds where neither of them would be defined by what they were, but by what they chose to become, together.